All right, today we're going to dive deep into a really controversial ancient text, one that has been quietly fueling rebellious ideas for centuries. We're going to trace the surprising and honestly super powerful influence of the Book of Enoch, a book that got kicked out of the Bible, but ended up having this wild second life in the worlds of magic and the occult. So let's just start with this quote. It sounds ancient, doesn't it? Like something you'd find on a dusty old scroll. But here's the thing, it's not. This is from a modern Luciferian magic book. And it's talking about the Nephilim, these hybrid children of angels and humans. This idea, this concept of incredibly powerful beings born from some kind of divine rebellion is a huge cornerstone for a lot of these modern groups. And that really brings us to the big question for this whole explainer. Where did this incredibly powerful myth actually come from? Is it something new, something that was just invented recently? Or does it have roots that go way, way deeper? To get to the bottom of that, we're going to start with today, with the groups who are openly using these ancient-sounding figures in their practice. And this is where things get really interesting, because the whole philosophy gets flipped completely on its head. You see, in these modern paths, the fallen angels, or the Watchers, they aren't the bad guys. They're actually the heroes. They're the rebels who brought forbidden knowledge to humanity, things like enlightenment, wisdom, and personal power. So they're not seen as corrupting forces at all. They're liberators. So, okay, if these ideas are really ancient, how in the world do they survive to influence groups today? Well, the bridge connecting the ancient world to the modern one, it was really built during the Renaissance in a pretty unlikely place, the court of Queen Elizabeth I. And it all centered on creating a very specific and very famous system of magic. And you can literally trace the path right here on this timeline. It all kicks off in 1581 with John Dee, who was Queen Elizabeth's personal astrologer, and his associate Edward Kelly. They claimed that they were contacting angels and receiving a secret divine language that they called Enochian. Fast forward a few centuries, and that exact same system gets picked up and used by Aleister Crowley, probably the most famous occultist of the 20th century. And from Crowley, it trickles down and finds its way into Anton LaVey's work when he founded the Church of Satan. It's a direct line. So how did they say they got all this information? Well, it was through a practice called scrying. Basically, after getting the ritual space all set up, Kelly would stare into a crystal or a black mirror, trying to enter a trance-like state. And he claimed that from there, he'd see visions of angels who would dictate this entire incredibly complex system to him. I mean, complete with its own alphabet, its own grammar, the whole shebang. And this is the absolute key, the name they gave this whole system. They called it Enochian magic. And they didn't just pull that name out of thin air. They claimed the angels told them that this was the original language of humanity, the exact same knowledge that was given to the biblical prophet Enoch. This is the move. This is what connects their 16th century rituals all the way back to a nearly mythical ancient past. So now that we've made that historical connection, it's time to actually pull back the curtain and look at the ancient source text that started this whole thing. The Book of Enoch isn't actually one single book. It's more like a collection of texts written centuries before Jesus was even born. Scholars call it apocalyptic literature, which just means it's filled with these epic divine revelations, prophecies, and crazy visions of the cosmos. And here's the really important part. For most religious traditions, it was left out of the final cut of the Bible. And you know what that does, right? It gives it this powerful forbidden allure. And this is what's so wild. This slide shows you what the big rebellion was all about. According to the book, these angels called the Watchers, led by a guy named Azazel, came down to Earth, and they taught humanity forbidden knowledge. But look at what this knowledge was. It's making swords and shields, crafting jewelry, even cosmetics and dyes. What are we really talking about here? These are the building blocks of civilization. The book itself frames this transfer of knowledge as the root cause of all corruption. It says that by teaching humanity how to do these things, the Watchers completely changed the world, leading it away from a simple divine existence into chaos and corruption. The point is, the knowledge itself was the sin. And this is a huge deal because it gives us a totally different origin story for evil. In a story most of us know from Genesis, right? The Adamic tradition. Sin is a human problem. It's on us. It starts with Adam and Eve making a bad choice. But in Enoch's version, no. Evil comes from the outside. It's an external force, a contamination brought to humanity by these rebel angels. That distinction is everything when you want to understand why this story is so appealing.
Okay, so now we can really start connecting all the dots. Let's trace these specific ideas from that ancient book all the way through to the modern groups we started with.
This table really lays it all out for us. Let's just walk through it. The core idea from Enoch, getting secret knowledge from angels, that's exactly what John Dee claimed he was doing with his Enochian magic. The Watchers themselves, well, their names start popping up in medieval magic books, these old grimoires. And the main rebel, Azazel, he gets reinterpreted over time. And that idea eventually influences concepts like Aleister Crowley's Holy Guardian Angel. And look, these ideas didn't just spread in a vacuum. They were passed down through this incredible web of interconnected secret societies and occult orders. You had influential Freemasons like Albert Pike, who connected their symbols to Kabbalah and this angelic knowledge. Those traditions, in turn, influenced groups like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which, guess who was a member? Aleister Crowley. And then Crowley's work directly influenced Anton LaVey. You can follow the breadcrumbs. It's a clear chain. Okay, so this all brings us to the biggest and maybe the most important question of all. What is the real nature of this whole connection? So let's just step back for a second and think about what this all means. When you put it all together, what are we really looking at here? Is this a genuine secret history? An unbroken chain of people talking to the same ancient angels for thousands of years? Or is there something else going on? You can really look at this in two different ways. On one hand, you have the practitioner's point of view, a direct, unbroken lineage. They believe they are genuinely tapping into the same ancient forces, the same watchers, that were first written about thousands of years ago. But on the other hand, you have the symbolic interpretation, that modern groups are simply drawn to these figures, Azazel, Lucifer, the Watchers, because they are powerful symbols, powerful archetypes of rebellion, knowledge, and standing up for yourself.
And that's really the core of it, isn't it? This is why the story endures. No matter which interpretation you lean towards, the story of the Watchers is an incredibly powerful myth. It takes the idea of rebellion and recasts it, not as a sin, but as a heroic act of enlightenment. It offers a path where forbidden knowledge is the actual key to unlocking your own inner divinity. Which leaves us with this final, kind of mind-bending question. When a modern magician uses these names, these systems from the Book of Enoch, are they actually tapping into some ancient supernatural power source? Or are they just channeling the symbolic power of one of the most compelling stories of rebellion ever written? The real answer, it seems, is still out there, somewhere in the shadows,